This section is on theories of reinforcement. So we've spent a lot of time labeling reinforcers as intrinsic, extrinsic, natural, contrived, that sort of thing. And now the question is, why is a particular thing reinforcing? What gives it that property? Now, reinforcers, by definition, all they do is they are consequences that make a behavior more likely in the future. So what is it about a consequence that gives it that power to increase behavior? That is what we're trying to figure out. So the first attempts at answering this question, we'll start with Hall, who said, well, reinforcers must be things that satisfy some kind of need. So if you're hungry, that produces a hunger drive, and food will satisfy that. So food is reinforcing. So that's why it's called drive reduction theory, the idea that reinforcers are things that give us something we need. Okay? Now that makes sense. Primary reinforcers are things that we will work for that we don't have to learn about. So from birth, just being human, we will do things to get food, to make sure we're a good temperature, not too hot, not too cold, to be in close contact with other humans, to have social relationships, and these are primary reinforcers. And then there might be other things we do that we have learned to connect to those primary reinforcers. So secondary reinforcers are things that are connected to food. So seeing that bag of potato chips, or seeing a commercial for Taco Bell or some restaurant, we might learn that's a reinforcer because it's connected to food. Now, this theory kind of quickly went downhill because we start realizing that people do things and will work for things that don't seem to have a particular need. So, we listen to music, we go to an art museum, we, draw, and what kind of need are we satisfying with those reinforcers? Now, at first, Hall and others just added to this list of needs that we must have. So perhaps humans have a creativity need, or an artistic need, or a curiosity need, and we seek out things that will satisfy this need. Think of somebody who is, loves to bungee jump or have high adventure. They sort of, having a need for speed. Is it that we're built to have all of these different needs, and then whatever satisfies them is a reinforcer? Well, that got a little bit unwieldy as a theory. So kind of moving on. Now, another thing that came up as an idea is perhaps this idea of incentive motivation. Maybe there's a property of the reinforcer itself that just sort of pulls our behavior toward it and makes us want to work for it. So could it be that reinforcers are things that have this special property? So if I'm hungry, but there's some food in the refrigerator, and I get up and I go get the food, maybe I even have to heat it up or something, I have to work for that reinforcer. Is it the property of the food that has something incentive that pulls my behavior along to go and get that reinforcer? So these are things that were sort of the old first attempts at explaining reinforcers. Well, sometime along early 70s, an idea came along that totally trashed all that earlier stuff and was way better. And it's called the Premack Principle. And what the Premack Principle said first off is that reinforcers are not things. It's not food. It's not a hug from your mom. It's not, something you buy at the store. It's not a thing. But reinforcers are behavior. It's what you do with that thing. So it's not food. It's eating food is the reinforcer. And this was a pretty wild change. And so now they go on. Now thinking of it that way, it's behavior, not a thing that you do. That you take any two behaviors and that you do, and you look at them and you ask which one it has a higher probability of you doing it. Basically, which one do you like more? And once you figure out between those two, so, you do lots of different things. You go to class, you go out for lunch. Now, out of those two choices, going to class and going to lunch, which one would you rather do? Well, probably go get something to eat, right? So that's a higher probability behavior compared to going to class. So class would be the low probability behavior. Going to get lunch is a high probability behavior. Now, between any behaviors, two behaviors, when you figure out the relative high and low, then what Premack says is reinforcement is the higher of the two. So if You do the lower probability. If you go to class, then you get to go out for lunch. That sets up the situation that creates reinforcement. So let's talk about that a little bit more. If I have I'd pick any two behaviors. So I could watch TV or I could study. Now between these two, which for you is the higher probability behavior? Which would you rather do? Well, maybe I'd rather watch TV. So knowing that this is higher than my probability of studying, then I have to, Premack says, reinforcement happens when you do the low first. Okay, so if I study first and I meet my goal, then my reinforcer is I get to watch TV. And if it's set up where you do the low, then you get the high, you will have a situation where there is reinforcement, meaning you can get yourself to study more than you normally would by rewarding yourself with watching TV. Now, according to Premack, if you have an opposite, if watching TV is really your high probability, but you do it first and you go, well, and we've done this, right? I'll just watch my favorite show and then I promise I will study afterwards, right? So you go ahead, you watch your show, and then I'm tired, Mom. Yeah. We don't really follow through, right? That is not reinforcement. There's nothing about the situation that has created you doing more of a certain behavior. And that's what reinforcers do. They increase behavior. So putting the high first, then the low won't work. But if we say, no, got to study a certain amount, then I get my TV, that works. So Premack is all about finding the relative high and low probability behavior. Let's do, here, what if we have, clean your room and eat pizza? Well, this is an individual thing. So, for most people, maybe like, oh, I don't want to clean my room, but I like pizza. So this would be the low, this would be the high. You have to clean your room first, then you get reinforced with pizza. Where if you do it the high first, not going to work. Now, for any person, it might be different. You might be like, I don't know, your room's really disgusting, and you're really full, you just ate lunch, you couldn't care less about pizza. Well, in that case, if right now this is your low, and this is your high, like I really want to clean my room because my mom's coming over and she's just going to nag me, it's going to be terrible, I got to clean my room. And your roommate goes, well, you have to eat this piece of pizza first, and then I'll allow you in your room to get, if you're like, I really want to do that, okay, this is my low, but I'm willing to do it so I can get to my high. Premack would be cool with that. So your high-low is always a relative thing. All right, so Premack works great, and actually it's kind of how we operate in the world. It's normally how we can get ourselves to do the things we want to do. We find something we'd rather do than the thing we're dreading, and we set it up as a reinforcer, as a reward for us meeting a certain goal. And it works great, and you should always kind of think in terms of Premack. But as far as the question goes, what makes something reinforcing? Premack isn't quite the answer. Someone else came along, Timberlake and Allison came along, and they said, we think you're on the right track, but you're not quite there, Premack. And he said, here's what we think's happening. Response deprivation theory. We think, yes, you are correct. Premack, we agree that reinforcers are behavior. It's not things, it's what you do with the thing, right? It's not those cool designer jeans, it's the fact that you get to wear them. So, but then they said it's high, low probability of behavior doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter. What matters is the rule, is the restriction, is the deprivation. What matters is you can't have the reinforcer until you've done this behavior, whatever it is. So it's restricting access that creates reinforcement, not the fact that it's a higher probability behavior. That's what Premack says. So if it's set up that if you do blank, anything that you would at least normally do, then you get blank, any behavior you normally do. As long as this is true, this is restricted until you satisfy what we determine here. That's what creates reinforcement. It's this restriction. You have to do something before you get this other thing. So in response deprivation, I can take any two behaviors you do, and I can put them in any order I want. The key is, though, whatever I want to make the reinforcer, I have to restrict your access to it below baseline, below the normal amount you'd normally do it. So think about it. And this is where I say, you know what? I bet I could use clipping your toenails as a reinforcer. And most people go, crazy. I said, in fact, I bet I could get you to drink more beer than you normally would by allowing you to clip your toenails. And you're like, you're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about, right? Now, if I took someone, or we'll eat pizza, let's eat pizza. Okay. Let's say I'm going to get you to eat more pizza than you would normally eat by reinforcing you with toenail clipping. You're like, okay. Now, if we were doing this by Premack, I'd say, okay, toenail clipping, eat pizza, which would you rather do? And let's say you go, you know what, I would rather eat pizza, thank you. I said, okay, well, in that case, if pizza is the high probability behavior, then all I have to say is, you know what, you can eat pizza after you clip your toenails. After you do your low, you can get your high. And you probably go, yeah, okay, I'll clip my toenails and you reinforce me with pizza. Now, response deprivation says, I can switch that. I can say, hey, guess what? You have to eat more pizza, and then I'll let you clip your toenails. Now, at first you might think, like, I don't care. I don't want to clip my toenails. But let's say you're not allowed to clip your toenails for a month, 2 months, 6 months. It's been a year. You can't rip them off. No cheating. You cannot clip your toenails until you eat 3 pizzas in an hour. I make up whatever rule I want. The key is I'm restricting this reinforcer. And if I restrict it enough, if I deprive you enough, it will get to the point where you'll do just about anything to get to that reinforcer. Okay? Assuming it's something you would do occasionally. And that's what response deprivation says. It's all about that restriction, the deprivation. So let's say I can use taking a shower as a reinforcer for eating more ice cream sundaes. Weird. But, if I say, okay, maybe not the first day, but the second day, third day, it's been 2 weeks, you haven't had a shower. And I don't care if you're lactose intolerant, eat the sundae. You'll be like, fine, I'll eat my sundae, right? Okay, think about studying. That's often a low probability behavior some days. What about the night before a test? This is now the higher probability behavior, right? And I could get you to do just about anything more than you'd normally do it, just so you could be reinforced with studying. All right, so that's what response deprivation says. And again, remember, Premack and response deprivation are the same in that reinforcers are behavior, not things, okay? But where Premack says it's relative probability, whatever is your higher one can reinforce you doing the lower. Response deprivation says it doesn't matter. Take any 2 behaviors you normally do, restrict access long enough to one of them, it becomes a reinforcer. All right, one last idea is this idea of Bliss Point. Now, we're trying to just, understand how people distribute the behavior, how they choose what to do. We're trying to understand behavior. So the Bliss Point idea, it's not an alternative to Premack or response deprivation. It's consistent with it. It would say, okay, let's say you had no restrictions on your behavior, and you could just choose what you would want to do. I love this part. Think about your Bliss Point. Let's say you wake up, maybe it's a snow day and school's been canceled, and you can do whatever you want. And any responsibilities you had that day are totally off. You can sleep in, maybe you'll sleep for a while, and then maybe you'll get a little hungry. Unfortunately, your tummy puts a little restriction because it needs some food, and you go down and eat whatever you want. Maybe you'll watch some TV, maybe you'll read a book, but you just get to choose whatever you want to do. That's your Bliss Point. Now, just put yourself in your happy little Bliss Point place, right? If you think about like vacation, that's supposed to be, let us get to our Bliss Point. Like, I'm just going to lie on the beach for a while. Everything's great. I don't have to be anywhere. I don't have to do anything. Now real life comes in. So let's say, you would spend your time as you choose, but then life comes and there's actually some restrictions on our behavior. So on any given day, maybe you have to go to class at a certain time. You have to go to work at a certain time. You have a certain time when you can study. You have practice. You have to eat before the dining hall closes. So what Bliss Point model says is and your book doesn't use this anymore, I don't think, but you can look at the minimum deviation model. This approach to understanding behavior is saying, okay, you figure out, whatever the person or the animal's bliss point is. And then given the restrictions placed on them by school, work, life, their behavior should have them making choices where they work at these different things to get as close to the bliss point as possible within the restrictions of the schedules that are placed on us, right? So, a lot of us enjoy our work. We do want to work. We do enjoy doing other things in our life. And so we would have, bliss point would be, how much time could we spend on all these different activities if we had a choice of as much as we want, and then what we actually do should get as close to that as possible within the restrictions that are placed on us. So, you would like to go to the movies all the time, but you're restricted by the fact that it costs a certain amount of money. They only show the movies at a certain time. So you kind of do your best. You pick the thing that's closest to your optimal choice. Okay. All right, that should do it for theories of reinforcement. This is in Chapter 7. I recommend looking at it. It's not a very long section. And there will be a Blackboard homework.